Welcome back to the Legacy Radio Network. This is Everything Financial Radio. I am your host, Dennis Tubbergen. We are chatting with Mr. Gerald Celente, publisher of the Trends Research Journal. And, Gerald, I want to jump right back in. When studying history, one can see that when economic times get tough, there are often conflicts between countries that come to a head. And in your most recent Trends Journal, you state that the major trend for 2013 is war. Now, obviously, that's a very sobering trend prediction. Can you explain to our listeners why you've reached that conclusion?
We're looking at a parallel. You know, they say that history repeats itself. It does, but it's never quite the same. You had the crash of 1929, the Great Depression, currency wars, trade wars, World War. You had the Panic of '08. There's a depression going on in a lot of places around the world, including the United States, for many, many people. The people who have dropped off the unemployment lists and can't find jobs, and the people that are working and hardly making ends meet. And then you're looking at currency wars. You listen to the new Prime Minister of Japan, Abe. The Bank of Japan's head is about to resign. Why? They want him to pump more money into the system to cheapen the value of the yen so the exporters could sell more product. Exactly what happened during or leading up to to World War II. Matter of fact, Japan lowered the value of its yen 60% against the U.S. dollar and 40% against the pound sterling back in the 1930s. You're seeing the same thing happening in the United States. They're debasing the currency by pumping all of this cheap money into the system and record low interest rates. The same thing is going on in Europe. You listen to Mervyn King, the head of the Central Bank of England, there's a currency war. You listen to Montega, there's a currency war. You listen to France's finance minister, there's a currency war. Trade wars are heating up. The trade sanctions against China continue to grow. War, anybody can see it. All they have to do is add it up. There's a war in Yemen, there's a war in Syria, there's a war in Libya. There's wars going on, civil wars by any other name that are beginning to rage, class warfare in Spain, in Portugal, in Italy, in Greece. You have millions of people out of work, over 26% of the population officially in places like Greece and Spain, 50% of the youth unemployment and above. And then you look around the world. You have destabilization in Egypt, in Tunisia. There's war heating up continually. And then you have the expansion now in Mali, in North Africa. 35 countries, America is now sending troops into Africa, AFRICOM troops. So we see war heating up. And the more these drone wars accelerate, the more the United States' expansion into other countries. Oh, I forgot to mention Iraq and Afghanistan. How could I forget? Virtually every day you pick up a newspaper, and there's mass murders going on in both of those countries. So now what happens is there's this thing called payback. They say that generals keep fighting the last war. They're fighting the last one now. And I forgot Iran. How could I forget that one? My God, you just keep adding them up. That's on the brink as well, as the rhetoric heats up from both the United States and Israel. And then as I was mentioning, the generals keep fighting the last war. This will be wars of weapons of mass destruction. It will be cyber wars. It will be wars of dirty bombs and biological warfare. It's not going to be tanks on a battlefield. It's not going to be F-35s. Matter of fact, people should go to the Fars news agency, the Iranian news agency, and look at the new aircraft that they're building. Imagine getting attacked by swarms of aircraft the size of drones, but a little bigger. And that's what they're building. So we're going to see, as economies decline, when all else fails, they take you to war. And I believe that's the direction things are heading to it.
Gerald, I'd like to get your opinion as to how this money printing worldwide, this race to the bottom, if you will, that's going on worldwide. Is war going to be, in your opinion, the event that stops the money printing, or will bond markets revolt first?
I don't know how it will play out. No, they'll have to print more money even, but it stabilizes things because as it did during World War II. I mean, that's what ended the Depression. Everybody knows that. You went into high gear production, and then following the war, it was the Marshall Plan, the rebuilding of Europe. So there will be that kind of thing. And again, the money printing, and let's make this 100% clear, the only thing that's keeping these economies going in the U.S., in China, in the United States, as I mentioned, and Europe, is the cheap money, low interest rates. What's going to happen when interest rates go up again? I just took out a commercial loan. I bought a historic building in Colonial Kingston, where we're headquartered, up just north of New York City, 3.25%, and they covered closing costs. Where do you get money like that? And what was the word coming out of Davos recently? Or the letters, I should say, LBO, because money's so cheap. So all the war will do is paper over what's going on now. But this isn't World War. World War III won't be like World War II. As Einstein said, I don't know how World War III will be fought, but I can tell you that World War IV will be fought with sticks and stones. There's no happy ending to this.
Joe, I'd like to shift gears and talk about some of the trends that you discuss in your latest issue of the Trends Research Journal. And of particular interest to me, because I'm involved in some of the natural and organic foods, you talk about genetically modified foods in your latest Trends Research Journal, and I'd like to quote just a sentence from that for the listeners. You write that although genetically engineered crops are either tightly regulated or banned outright in much of Europe, the experiment is being conducted in the U.S. by agribusiness corporations with little oversight. This is a story a lot of people are not aware of. Could you give the listeners an example or two?
Sure. The soybeans and the corn, many of the products, the hormones fed, that's on the food end, on the grain end. And then what they've done, the bovine growth hormones in cattle, etc. This isn't allowed in Europe. And we're seeing the effects in many different ways. And we're seeing studies coming out showing how dangerous these are. Dennis, back in 1993, I coined the term clean food. And you could check that out. It was in the New York Times. Wrote about it in the Trends Journal as well back in 93. I also have an honorary doctorate in complementary medicine from the National University of Health Sciences. And you're going to see more and more people. The trend is pushing very strongly for clean and safe foods. People don't want to eat this genetically modified, that nobody knows what's really going to happen. And then you see the revolving doors, by the way. For an example, the woman that just put together, that was one of the chief architects of Obamacare. Well, she just went into the pharmaceutical end of the business. Oh, what a surprise. The people that come into the SEC go back into the white shoe boy law firms, the people that they're supposed to be prosecuting. And you see the revolving door. Same thing with the FDA. So we really don't have government regulation that protects the people. The government regulations protect the biggest of the big businesses. And I don't say that with just, as a quip. Here's a fact. Too big to fail. 4 words that I didn't invent. And that killed capitalism. And it's the same thing going on in virtually every sector of society, whether it's in retail, whether it's in agriculture, whether it's in communications, you name it. Whether it's in the defense industry, it's all controlled by a very few. So when a very few control it, they make the rules. So yes, it's a great experiment. I'm of Italian descent. To me, Olive Garden's not Italian food. We eat healthy in the way I was grown up. And then you see the difference in what's happening in America. We're the most obese country on earth. So a lot of this also is stemming back to of course, you are what you eat. You don't need a science degree in this to figure it out. You eat crap, and drink crap. Guess what the result is going to be? On the other end, however, there's a real strong movement towards safe food, toward a what's the right word here? Looking at urban areas and then growing food in them that have been destroyed. So like places in Detroit, places in urban cities that have been decayed. Young people are going into them, and in these empty lots, they're restoring them and growing food. It's a huge trend, urban gardening. So we're going to see more and more of that.
Joel, in the couple of minutes we have left, I want to just have you comment on a couple other trends that you write about in your most recent journal. It used to be that, one of the middle-class success symbols was I own a home and I have a car that is within a couple model years of the current model year. You state that car ownership and home ownership are both on the decline, and I'd like to ask you, what's driving that trend?
Well, there's a number of factors, but the biggest one, of course, as we see it, is the exporting of U.S. jobs to other countries. So the jobs that are being created don't pay a lot of money. And again, you look at the stats; they're all there. The jobs being created in low levels in healthcare, retail, and that's service the hospitality, as they call it. Waiting tables and bartending and making beds in hotels. So now you have young people coming out into the system, and they're no longer buying cars; they can't afford it. They don't have a dream of a house; they're living with their parents. They can't get a job or get one that pays enough money. So the cycle is broken. Where you got out of college, or if you worked in an industrial city or state where you could get a high-paying job, you had the future of the American dream. It no longer exists for most people. And again, you look at the data of the people graduating college that can't find jobs. So we're looking at a very new cycle here, where people are not going to be following the old pattern where each generation thought that the coming new generation would be financially and quality of life better off than their parents. Now we're seeing a reversal of that, a major trend.
Well, the website is trendsresearch.com. We've been chatting with Mr. Gerald Celente, publisher of the Trends Research Journal. Gerald, thanks for your time. We certainly hope you'll come back.
Oh, thanks for having me on, Dennis.
Everything Financial Radio will return after these words. Stay with us.